Hi, my name is Pete Vigeant, and I'm one of the 11 students that created Pac-Manhattan back in 2004. I graduated college in 2003 with a degree in playwriting, and my real specialty was working with kids in large groups and creating big games that would be played in the middle of the woods or in fields and kind of doing soft skill training and things like that. Experiential education is what it was called. And I found this graduate program which was really appealing to me called the Interactive Telecommunication Program at New York University, which is a mix of art and technology. And in this program, there was a class in my first year called Big Games. So Big Games was about creating big urban games. Ultimately, that's what it was about. We did talk a lot about massive multiplayer online games like World of Warcraft and PlanetSide, and we also talked about games like metagames like fantasy football and salty bets and things like that. But the real goal of the class was to figure out how to make Bugs, which would be a big urban game. So for this class, we had an end of year assignment. We had to work together or work with a team to make something. And there were 11 of us in the class, and we were sitting around trying to come up with an idea. And someone said Pac-Manhattan. I don't remember exactly who it was, but they said the name first. Everyone in the room it just clicked. It was like, how does this not exist? We Googled it. I believe by the end of class, someone had already gotten the domain pacmanhattan.com, and we were just really excited. Like, what could this mean? What could this be? And then we were looking at Google Maps and looking at our area around Washington Square Park, saying, hey, this actually is almost a perfect Pac-Man board. So it's like this is built for us. So we had all these big plans around technology, and we started conceptualizing this when Frank Lantz, our professor, was out of town. And so we were all getting behind it, and we're like writing down plans and saying, okay, GPS, and it will be sending stuff via SMS to a central server that will suck it up with a Python script or something like that. We were very ambitious when it came to trying to solve all of these disparate systems and have them come together at a time when it wasn't really easy. There was not a lot of computing power in your phone, and there was not a lot of back-end plumbing that would allow for all of this data to be traveling perfectly. And so Frank Lantz came back, and we're describing it to him, and we're all excited, and we're all like, well, this is the deal, and we're going to do this thing, and we need, and he looked at us, and he said, okay, here's the deal. You have to play this game in 10 minutes. And we all looked at each other, and we're like, well, that's crazy. We don't have any of the tech. And he's like, no, I'm serious. Play the game in 10 minutes from now. And he set a timer. And so then we're like, okay, well, how do we solve this with no technology or with the technology we already have on us? And so we printed out maps of the grid and what we expected the grid to be, and we wrote down a coordinate system. So we took the area around Washington Square Park and did A1, A2, A3 at each one of the intersections, so that way we could identify which ones they were. And everyone put a map in their pocket, and we traded a bunch of phone numbers, and we got some coins to use as play pieces. And we did this all via telephone. So I believe I was a ghost, and so I went down on the street, and I was a direct line with someone who was like in the control room. And what we had decided was that the ghosts would all sit around one map, and Pac-Man would sit around his own map, or her own map. And so there was four controllers in the control room that were talking to the four ghosts, and then there was one controller that was talking to Pac-Man. So the ghosts were all in a separate room. They each had individual computers, and so they would control their own ghosts, Blinky, Inky, Pinky, and Clyde. And they would move those ghosts around, but they couldn't see where Pac-Man was. But if someone was on the phone and said, "Hey, Blinky just saw a Pac-Man," Blinky would tell that, and then the controller for Blinky would share that information with the other controllers, who would share that out with the ghosts. So they did have information sharing, and they could strategize, which gave them a pretty fair advantage, considering that there were 4 of them looking for one Pac-Man. So that was kind of the technology back end. So it was all done using phones and using this. And then there was a spectator view, which just showed a Pac-Man board with everyone moving around, that people could go online and look at. And it would look just like someone was playing Pac-Man. It would just look like a normal Pac-Man board, maybe moving much slower than actual Pac-Man, because running an entire block takes a long time in New York. We were doing this fun game. We were wearing costumes and stuff like that. And we started taking video of it, and we shared some of the video with some folks. And I believe that someone had written about us doing this experiment on Slashdot. And through our network of connections, a New York Times reporter got wind of what we were up to and really wanted to play. So we were like, okay, that sounds great. Like, we'll have someone from the New York Times play, and I believe maybe someone else from Wired played. And so we went out on one Saturday, and we had everything all set up, and we were wearing all our costumes, and we played with these other folks. And all of a sudden, it was like we were inundated with media requests, and we basically did one main event on a Saturday, and then spent the next almost year answering media requests about that one event, which was amazing. Pac-Manhattan, as this one example, we shared everything that we did out with the world. Pac-Manhattan spawned hundreds of Pac-Manhattan clones for other cities over the next 10 or so years. And we would get pictures and wind of that. And then you can search Google. You can see all sorts of other people playing the same game that we made in other places, because they had seen it somewhere and it just really excited them. And we were the first. But of course, we were doing it because the name made so much sense to us. Pac-Manhattan is really exciting in an urban environment because it forces us to re-examine the space around us. It brings some magic to the space around us. If we look at the block that we walk on every day to work, if we look at that as something different and new, like instead of a block that I'm walking on to work, I'm actually running through a play field or a play space, that changes my relationship to the space. And it means that next time I walk through it, maybe I'll look at it differently, and that's better. That's awesome. That's so cool. If we can add a little magic to someone's day because they see someone running around wearing a Pac-Man costume, and then you see the ghost chasing after them, that will excite them, and maybe they'll start looking at that block a little differently too. Maybe they'll start looking around their outside space a little differently, and start thinking more playful thoughts and imagining more playful thoughts. We like to add a little bit of magic to the world, and big urban games allow us to add this magic because we can recast these common structures and places and locations and intersections into new ideas where our imagination is allowed to take over. We're allowed to walk in and pretend to be something that we're not, and enjoy that space in a whole new way.